Welcome to the podcast Social Work Successes, which aims to shine a big spotlight on the brilliant work that social work professionals do with children and families every day, because this is just not celebrated enough. Practitioners will be sharing their stories, which will hopefully not only inspire others, but also provide some helpful learning in relation to factors that may have contributed to that success. You guys deserve far more recognition than this podcast can give, but thank you for listening and everything you do for the families you work with. Welcome to the podcast Social Work Successes. Today is a really special episode because it's slightly different. I'm joined by a group of practitioners who are working with a specific group called the Dandelion group. So I think I'm going to come to Louise first to introduce herself and say a little bit more about what the group is and its purpose and how it's working.
Yeah, so I'm Louise Spragg, Principal Social Worker. The group started around 2 years ago now, and it was the initial purpose was for the parents who had been supported by services, and that's across children's services, to support with the development of a parenting booklet through the Family Hubs project and early help and support. And the idea briefly of that booklet was that when a family exited our service, if they faced a challenge again, they could revisit their journey within that booklet and draw on the areas of strength that they drew on before, and really kind of recognise that they can get through it and really draw on their previous coping mechanisms. And that was the initial blueprint, if you like, for the group. And we wanted a booklet to serve parents, designed by parents, rather than practitioners kind of using that expert knows best approach, and actually meeting with people who received support and hearing, you know, the positives and the areas of development for that. But what transpired was that we did get some ideas for the booklet, and the booklet has been produced, but ultimately it turned into a lot bigger than that, really. We recognised, for me, I joined a little bit later of the group, but we'd also implemented family safeguarding at the same time, which is very much looking at how you can support parents within the family safeguarding arena by working alongside them and using their lived experience and their own expertise to solve their own problems with support. And we understood really that nationally the child protection system was recognised to be quite draconian in nature, quite prescribed, and thankfully that was moving towards more collaboration and working alongside people, basically. So when we were hearing the lived experiences of members of the group, a lot of the areas that they talked about that could have been better were relational working, trauma-informed practice, and everything that we'd already started to think about as practitioners as well. So, and then their enthusiasm and commitment to want to support us to change certain parts of our system that can mean that relational practice isn't always at the forefront. And we realised from those conversations that we both want the same things. Practitioners want to be able to work with families in a meaningful capacity and have good relationships with them, even in difficult circumstances. And parents, again, want a positive relationship with somebody to get them through their difficult time. So we thought, right, okay, what can we do? And then members of the group, the whole group, the core group, wanted to support us to support other parents. So that was the beginning of the Dandelion group, if you like, and they actually chose that name themselves. And the thinking behind it is that a dandelion is everything that child enjoys. We all remember blowing a dandelion when we were younger, so really holding the child in mind, but that also when you blow the dandelion, little splinters go off, and that they can affect different areas. So as a core group, they're a dandelion stem, but they're working on lots of different things together to make a difference across their community. And then very briefly, there's been a couple of members who have really stood out in terms of their ability to learn, reflect, willingness to support practitioners, willingness to support their community. So that we have supported them with training and development to be able to offer one-to-one advocacy with parents who are receiving support from our services, but then also as a core group, they support with systems development. So that could be a change in practice, training, leaflet development, any information that's being given to parents would go through them first, and a real focus on co-production in a meaningful sense. So not just me presenting a leaflet to them and saying, what do you think? Actually, us as practitioners sitting alongside them and saying, parents need to know this information. How do you think that that would be helpful to receive? What would have been helpful for you to have received when you were experiencing our support? And we design it together. And that's the difference. So you're sharing spaces with people with lived experience and learnt experience, because the expertise that they've got is bigger than their lived experience. They are reflective. They are really consumed with research and learning, and yeah, so all round really that experience alongside practitioners actually designing something for our community, and the strength in that, really, I think, rather than a practitioner taking, an expert knows best approach and handing out a leaflet or a system design or anything like that. It's actually co-designed from the off. And also, just before I move on, the spaces that we hold are collaborative in the sense that we all bring something to the table. It's not tokenistic. We are learning from each other all the time. And I think for us, that is the success of the group. As a system, we can be very good at getting feedback from people who use services or people who are supported from services. But it's the so what question. How are they influencing the design of those services in the future? And that, for us, the key to this is it's got to be impactful, really. And yeah, that's a very brief summary of the group.
That is brilliant. Thanks, Louise. And I just love this idea. I just think it's so brilliant. And I really hope that if anybody is listening who has the powers to set up somewhere something similar in their own area, they'll maybe reach out to you guys to get a bit more understanding of that, because I just think this is such a powerful idea, so brilliant. And I love, I've watched one of the videos that is available about the group, and I love the fact that these parents are termed experts, and you mentioned it then, and they absolutely are, aren't they? They have had an experience that no practitioner has had, so they are
Yeah.
totally the expert in how it feels to be in this position and to voice what's needed and to have that influence. I think it's brilliant.
And I think a key for us really was learning from people who have done it before. So relational activism and our colleagues at Camden Local Authority, they have been doing this for a significant period of time, and they really aided the scaffolding of that group and bringing people together to form the foundation of it, I think. So although we have grown it, if you like, and the dandelion has taken root, they really helped set it up with their ideas about how to set a group up, their creativity. And I think that the group, one of the successes of the group is that they responded to the way that it was initially set up. So then that gives your foundation for moving forward. So I think, the success of the start of the group has been our collaboration and working together with relational activism. And then we've had certain people like Wendy, Dan, and other colleagues that have then been able to plough that forward. So I think that's really important to mention.
Okay, Dan, should we come to you?
Yeah, so I'm Dan Machin. I'm a systemic psychotherapist at the local authority. So I've got lots of different roles, but in terms of the Dandelions, one of my roles is to provide support in terms of having those reflective conversations, opening space for sort of reflective conversations in groups, opening space to think about sort of dialogue with the local authority further around providing space, I guess, to reflect on how far they've come as a group and are continuing to grow as a group, and also, you know, some of those challenges that are going to be inevitable along the way, some of those difficult experiences we're going to have, some of those difficult conversations we're going to have. So part of my role is to help embed that culture in that group, but also in the local authority itself, thinking about how we can have these conversations that are going to produce a positive change, really, and how we can really promote the group and have really active listening skills when it comes to the feedback we're getting.
Yeah.
Actually, to make sure that this level of this co-production isn't something that we're saying we're doing; it's something that we're actively doing.
Yeah, it sounds like that's a really big theme, that you guys are putting so much into this that you want to make sure that what is coming out of it is really kind of mirroring the effort that's going in from what the parents are contributing. I guess so if part of that has been advice on and having discussions with parents about when you have those more difficult conversations, and then that's fed back thinking about the wider kind of staff implication. This might be putting you on the spot, but I'm just interested to know what's kind of like one or two things that has come out of some of those discussions.
I think a lot of self-reflexivity, really, and seeing the other and seeing other people's experiences. So from the side of practitioners, we've seen a lot of new information come to them about how we influence people's lives. Because, like, you know, as we said at the start, the Dandelions have got lived experience about what it's like to be on the end of our help. And actually, that's as positive as we always want that to be. That can be challenging as well, and that can be a unique experience. So actually, they've provided a lot of insight for our practitioners, really, into what it's like to be involved with children's services, to be involved with helping services in general. But also, I think in opening that dialogue, what we've done as well is we've created a space where, you know, a lot of the Dandelions are really aware of the challenges facing social care departments and social workers and social care practitioners. So there's been a bringing closer together of those spaces, and actually we've really tried to move from that space of actually with that starting foundation of there isn't an us and them, there's only an us. There's only a we in this, actually. You know, if we all succeed from this, that's the only way any of us are going to succeed from this. And I think so that culture's really grown out of it.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thanks, Dan. So if we bring in Wendy and you just say a little bit about your role too, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Wendy Chetter, and I'm the team manager for the Independent Safeguarding Service at Telford and Wrekin. I became involved with the Dandelions, must be about 18 months ago now. So reasonably at the beginning of the project. And I think my involvement has been very much around co-production and supporting the Dandelions to feel more comfortable around working with social workers, working with the conference chairs. That's taken quite a while to build up that trust. And I think initially we would meet with the Dandelions away from the offices. They would talk about feeling triggered by coming into our building. So we've had to go slowly and respect that. I think they're feeling much more comfortable now. They've done their advocacy training, the ones that want to be advocates at child protection conferences. We're at the process now when we're going to start to help them come to the conferences, maybe observe a couple of meetings, break them in gently about child protection conferences and how they're going to be supporting parents. So that means that they need to spend times with the independent reviewing officers and conference chairs, getting to know them, building up that trusting relationship. I think a big part of this work is about trust, about them feeling safe, them feeling respected, that their views are valued, that they've done the training. And like Dan and Louisa said, you need to take your hat off. You need to be just as one group of people listening to each other, not coming in with one more important role than the other. We've all got a really important part to play. So we've got that sort of side of the work we've been doing about preparing for advocating at conferences. We've also done some lovely co-production work. We've done a feedback form with a nice QR code, which goes out with the letters to parents, so they can just fill that in off the QR code from their experience at the Child Protection Conference. They've worked really well with us on that. That's been really helpful. They've produced a video with us about coming to the conference, so looking at the building, walking our way through what the process is going to be like, and just giving parents who are coming to conference that information about what to expect. So they've helped us design that, and they've been the voice speaking over the information that we're sharing. So that's a nice video.
That is I imagine such an overwhelming experience, especially the first time that you come to it. So yes, is the idea then that they obviously they've shaped advice that goes out to parents around what those conferences look like and what's happening. I wasn't sure whether was the idea that the parent experts, are they coming to any of those conferences, or they are?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're very soon going to be starting to support parents at the conference as an advocate.
Brilliant.
So, you know, the
Okay,
video tells them, the parents coming to the conference, what to expect, what the building looks like, where they're going to sign in, and then what the meeting's going to be like. So that's sort of the first stage of it. And then our advocates will be paired up with parents who want an advocate and can support them at the conference. That would be really nice.
Yeah, I think when I spoke previously with Claire, we talked about this idea of how strong that sense of epistemic trust is within this organization. So a sense that if somebody doesn't feel understood by you, they might hear what you're saying, but they're not necessarily listening. And it feels, just from speaking to you guys this morning, that there's two strands of that happening in terms of the way that you guys are working with the parent experts. So they are feeling that you are so open and curious to understand them, that's why that relationship is working well. But equally, I think even more powerfully, for the parents to experience another parent who is able to understand them. Of course, they're going to be a better place to understand them than we would necessarily as professionals because of that experience that they've had. So the critical bit there is being open to feeling like this person's understanding you, so that expert is then able to offer them that advice and support that perhaps is much better received than it would be perhaps from someone else who doesn't have that experience. So I think that theme feels really strong within this group, and it's probably why it's working so brilliantly.
I think there's always going to be work to do. I think we're sort of, if you think of a circle, we're sort of in the middle of it at the moment. You know, we have to widen this out to help the social workers and other members of the local authority understand the benefit of this. I mean, Louise, there was a lovely example, wasn't there, on one of the WhatsApp groups the parents have. At the beginning of the project, they had a WhatsApp group, and I think Louise and Chris were supporting with that, not particularly getting involved, but they were there with the parents if they wanted any support. And there was an incident where one of the parents had an incident with one of their children and their back door got smashed. Now, normally they might have contacted EDT and said, we need some support. This is really, really need some help. But they didn't need that. They managed it between themselves. One of them says, I'll send my partner around. He can mend that for you. And they managed it. I mean, that's got to be the ultimate goal, isn't it? Wider groups of these parents supporting each other without us having to be there.
Yeah, it's that community, isn't it? I mean, we talk about that both inside and outside of social work. That is very much absent, and actually can be hugely supportive and powerful, and take some strain off other service and resource if we can build that sense of community. Okay, so I guess thinking about some of the potential challenges that have been faced.
Just picking up on something you said then, Alice, about trust, and I think that's a huge word. And I think one of the key things that's been that's been really important is being really explicit from the start that like trust isn't something you can sort of expect of somebody. Trust isn't something you can necessarily just ask for or plan for. Trust is something that's got to be grown, built, and developed as we go. And I think that was one of the real challenges from the start. Is actually, we as a local authority, we represent some of the really challenging experiences people have had. And actually, one of the key first questions was about like badges and lanyards and job titles, and how all of these can have historic narratives and be triggers for people. So actually, but I think what was really important was we were really clear from the start is we're not expecting trust from the off. We're expecting this to be possibly a bit of a bumpy road. We're expecting some of these conversations to not go out as we both hoped, but as long as we're open to that possibility, and as long as we keep remaining curious about what people are open to get from it, hopefully trust will come in the future. But I think that was one of the big challenges was getting that started, and like I said, we one of the big first early decisions we made was that no one would wear a lanyard whilst we were in like a big group that was a mix of dandelions and professionals. That actually nobody really had a job title whilst we were in there. Everyone kind of represented themselves and their own experiences and was there to be curious about other people.
And I think that's probably a really good point for practitioners to pick up on. What that lanyard immediately can trigger, how it immediately represents almost this like medal of power. And I don't think that's intentional, but that's how it can be seen. And obviously it has its function. It's got your ID on. You might need to show it for that purpose. But certainly it's not something that needs to be on, all the time or at an initial visit, or using it sparingly as and when it's needed. People probably leave them on almost wearing it like a necklace and they forget it's there. I don't think it's ever going to be intentional, but so important, just something so subtle that can have such an influence on that relationship from the beginning.
So I was the first social worker that they encountered in the group from our organisation. So they'd had the social worker that is involved with relational activism, but everybody else involved in the initial starting of the group was alternatively qualified, and that actually did make a difference to them. So I had to work incredibly harder than anybody else to gain that trust, and I probably underestimated that, to be honest. Like, certain members of the group that couldn't maintain eye contact with me, that couldn't talk to me, that my presence was a threat, and it's really understanding where that comes from. And I guess to get over that barrier, it was just continuing to turn up, continuing to sit, sometimes just alongside, not impose yourself, but then continue to deliver on what you say that you're going to deliver on, and to gain that respect and that trust. And eventually now I am a member of the group. They call me a dandelion. That's what they call me. And I think that, they've had to learn how to accept me, and then I've had to learn how to gently move myself into into their space, not the other way around. You can't expect to be invited in and to be trusted straight away. Like, this is their space, and you have to almost earn that respect and that value of being in that, really. And I think what was helpful is when initially it was set up, relational activism really said to us who were involved in the second phase, you have to move at the speed of trust. And I think that's really important. So we have achieved so much in 2 years, and we wouldn't have long enough to go through everything that we've achieved, but it has been slowly and steady, and introducing people to the group in the organisation who are able and in a position to have influence, but also understand that dynamic. And I think that's why Wendy and Dan have been accepted as well, because we understand the power interplay, we understand and value their expertise and role, really, and that's really key for any relationship. You have to value the person that you're sitting with or sitting alongside. So yeah, it was a challenge.
So if we think about, I'm going to come to each of you for one factor that you think has contributed to the success of the group.
I think that we're incredibly fortunate that the commitment and the drive to support other people in their community of the group. I think that because without that, you wouldn't ride the storms and you wouldn't be doing this work. So that their commitment to making a difference and serving their community, alongside the relationship that we've managed to build together, for me, is my main success, I think.
Brilliant. Thanks, Louise. Dan?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of following on. I think it's that the biggest success for me has been able to have a lot of some of the conversations we've had have been really, really tricky and have touched on some really, really important subjects. And I think throughout that, what we've been able to do is to lean into that discomfort, to actually, when things have felt tricky, actually that's brought us closer together. And actually it's kind of demonstrated that I guess all views, all opinions, all information is going to be really valid here, and there are no wrong answers. There are no expectations of when we ask questions about what the parents experience. There's no expectations about what they say, and actually it's having that space, I guess that sense of neutrality has really helped. And I think what it means is now we can speak really openly with each other, and actually we can really start a dialogue that's got a lot of traction of making changes and getting stuff done. And actually, like you say, to see some of the actions that come out of that, what's really important is to ask questions that you're not afraid of the answer of. And I think that's the position where we're at now, where we can ask questions and we can get sort of live feedback that doesn't have to be comfortable and doesn't have to fit naturally, but actually what we can do is we can work on it together.
And that's just such a great message, isn't it, for practitioners starting in that point of working with a family and having that relationship, that openness is so central to building that relationship, and it being on both sides. Parents want you to be open with them. Of course, you need them to be open with you to get a clearer picture of what's happening. So there's definitely something there about how that can be portrayed from the very beginning of that relationship. Brilliant. Okay, so just to wrap up, I'm going to come to each of you, as I do at the end of all of these episodes, for you to describe what you kind of love most about the job that you're currently doing and your role. So Louise, let's go to you first.
Me, it would be the involvement with the Dandelion group. It keeps me fresh, it keeps me focused and committed to working alongside people, which I don't do anymore in my day-to-day job because I'm in a different role. So actually it keeps my kind of relationship building fresh, and they just keep me motivated to continue to do the best possible things that we can do to understand the people that we work alongside better, and then how I can translate that to get practitioners to try and relate to families in the best possible way that they can in the challenges that they're experiencing. So that, for me, that's the best part of my role.
Brilliant. Thanks, Louise. Dan?
Well, I mean, I'm a social worker who became a therapist, so that's the dream, right? That's the best of both.
Yes,
That's the best of both worlds.
That is a brilliant balance of both.
So not only do I continue to have, I guess, the honor of meeting these families when they're at some of the most challenging points of their life, and hopefully trying to play my part in helping them out, but also promoting therapeutic practice, promoting systemic thinking, promoting reflexive thinking across, whether that's families, whether that's groups of practitioners. It's I get to meet so many different people in all levels of the system, and I think that's it just makes every day more interesting than the one previous, really.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Wendy?
Yeah, my slightly different role to Dan and Louise's. I manage quite a large team, but they're a great team. They've got lots of experience. But I think what I like most is being able to influence service development, and that's been lovely working with the Dandelions that we can do that.
Brilliant. Okay, yeah, and it's like that feels like a really strong, powerful message about the influence and that purpose. And as I said at the beginning of this, like I think it's brilliant, and I wish it I wish it wasn't kind of a postcode lottery where this is existing in some places and not others, but maybe that can change, because often you just need that outcome based research, don't you? And fingers crossed that can happen, and it will grow and develop elsewhere as well. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for listening. This podcast is really in its infancy phase, so please do like, share, subscribe, tell your colleagues, tell your managers, tell anyone else that you think might benefit. Thank you.